What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
That's the name of the shot.
What do you mean?
Alright, welcome back. This is not the first time I've talked about Boeing, but just so everyone's on the same page, I'll bring you up to speed. Now, the 737 MAX 8 has been in commercial use since 2017, and this leads us to a tragic day on the 29th of October 2018. Lion Air flight JT610 that was departing the capital of Indonesia, Jakarta, at 6:20 a.m. due to land an hour later, crashed 13 minutes into its flight, killing all 189 people on board. And then not even 6 months after the Indonesian crash, on the 10th of March 2019, Ethiopian Airlines flight ET302, leaving the capital of Addis Ababa for a 2-hour flight to the capital of Kenya, leaving at 8:38 in the morning, started to experience difficulties 6 minutes into the flight and crashed at 8:44 a.m. And the impact was so great that the engines were buried in a crater that was 10 meters deep, that's about 32 feet, and 28 meters wide by 40 meters long. And so obviously all 157 people on board were killed. And now, why did these planes go down? And we'll quickly talk about that. Now, what brought both of these Boeing 737 MAX 8s down is what was called the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, MCAS. It's a computer-controlled stability system that had a sensor in the nose of the plane to detect the angle of the flight, and then it would adjust the tail if the angle was too high. It only takes about 10 degrees to stall the plane, but if the sensors were giving false readings, the system activated when it didn't need to and pushed the nose down anyways. I bet you're asking, couldn't the pilots just turn this off? Yes, but it would restart if it continued to get false readings.
That MCAS was poorly designed, and it was the automation system that contributed to these crashes.
I want you to be as informed as possible. I'm going to tell you why this MCAS system was put in the planes. Now, you see, these new engines came out that were 15% more fuel efficient, and Airbus got them and they fit perfectly fine under their planes, but Boeing's were too low and they couldn't just swap out the engines. And so instead of redesigning a whole new plane for these engines, they moved them forward a bit, and doing this, it caused the nose to go up too much when the planes are trying to take off, causing it to stall, and then that's what led to this system being put on the planes. So there's a whole lot of cutting corners and patching things up instead of doing it right from the start. And now I'm going to include this interview that was in the first video I did about Boeing with a former senior manager from Boeing, Ed Pearson.
Pressure on engineers to get the plane designed, and test pilots to get the plane flight tested. I can tell you with 100% confidence that there was equal, if not greater, pressure being put on production workers. Something happened in the translation from let's build a high quality, safe product to let's get it out done on time.
So in that regard, you were most concerned about, I suppose, safety defects being inadvertently injected into these planes?
Correct.
So what do you think was motivating Boeing to put this sort of stress on their workforce?
We were trying to get airplanes out to customers.
And profits, I suppose, as well, came with that?
Yes, but when you inject that schedule pressure, that very relentless type of schedule pressure, and you put people and you work on those types of hours, and your performance metrics and all your indicators that you should be paying attention to are telling you things are going bad, that should have been enough warning. There's more enough warning in there to stop and slow down and do it right, and that didn't happen. And
I think at one point you even said that that you wouldn't put your family on a Boeing plane.
I said I was hesitant to put my family on a Boeing plane. I was the only time in my career that I felt that way, and I stated as much to the general manager based on what I was seeing. I didn't know it at the time, but when I was communicating with the general manager at my concerns that the Lion Air airplane was in the production system somewhere in that, either inside the factory or just outside the factory.
At one point, one of the managers said that he couldn't shut down the factory. I think he said that at the time that you'd seen military operations shut down for much less. How did that make you feel?
My first thought was, just because we're a profit-making organization doesn't give us the right to take chances like that with people's lives.
You've also gone through and found that there were more safety incidents involving the MAX planes. What did you find out, and how important do you think that information is?
We're talking about 380 so airplanes, 13 incidents, 2 fatal crashes on top of that, and that represents 4% of 387. So basically 1 out of every 25 airplanes had already had a safety incident. And
Now I'd like to show you another BBC article back from 2019 titled Boeing, US regulator admits mistake over aircraft crashes. And a couple of sentences from this article. US aviation regulators allowed Boeing's 737 MAX aircraft to continue flying despite knowing there was a risk of future crashes. Analysis after the first crash predicted there could be up to 15 disasters over the lifetime of the aircraft without design changes. Despite this, the Federal Aviation Administration did not ground the MAX until the second crash 5 months later. Boeing is revising the MCAS software, but lawmakers say their investigation has shown that the aircraft manufacturer was aware of the flaws in the system. Boeing staff have also raised concerns that the company was prioritizing speed over safety at the factory that produces MAX 737s, contributing to the crashes. Ed Pearson, a former senior manager at the factory, told Congress he repeatedly warned Boeing's leadership of the safety risk caused by what he described as a factory in chaos, but it had little effect. He also said that after the crashes, US government regulators have shown little interest in his concerns. I remain gravely concerned that the flying public will remain at risk unless this unstable production environment is rigorously investigated and closely monitored by regulators on an ongoing basis, he said in a prepared testimony. And then a month later, here's another BBC article titled Boeing faces fine for 737 MAX planes designed by clowns. US regulators are seeking to fine Boeing $5.4 million for knowingly installing faulty parts on 737 MAX planes. The move comes after the release of internal messages that raise more questions about the jet's safety. In one exchange in April 2017, an unnamed employee wrote, "This airplane is designed by clowns who in turn are supervised by monkeys." The documents also showed Boeing planning to push back against requirements that the 737 MAX pilots receive training on simulators, which would have led to higher costs for its customers, making its aircraft less attractive. I want to stress the importance of holding firm that there will not be any type of simulator training required to transition from MG to MAX, Boeing 737 chief technical pilot at the time, Mark Faulkner, said in a March 2017 email. Boeing will not allow that to happen. We will go face to face with any regulator who tries to make that a requirement. And then I'll look at that, ended up recommending 737 MAX simulator trainings for all pilots. And now let's talk about 2024.
I look up and the oxygen masks were hanging from the ceiling. And then I look to my left and there's this huge chunk, part of the airplane just like missing.
On the 5th of January 2024, Alaskan Airlines Flight 1282 departed Portland, Oregon at 4:52 p.m. and about 6 minutes into the flight, a part of the plane flew off, which is called a door plug, which was about 27 kilos, 60 pounds, causing rapid depressurization, which then caused the plane to have to land at 5:27 p.m. at the same airport it departed from. The door plug was then recovered from someone's yard, and now this was a Boeing 737 MAX 9, and it was only delivered to Alaska Airlines on the 31st of October 2023. And here's another clip about it.
NBC News has also confirmed the Justice Department has launched a criminal investigation into Boeing following the blowout door plug on a 787 MAX 9 in January. The NTSB determined the plane left the Boeing plant without critical bolts that hold the plug in place.
Did you hear what they said? Did you hear why the door plug flew off the plane? Because bolts were not fitted. 4 bolts. Just 4 bolts is why that happened. And thankfully, it only happened at 16,000 feet and not the height that a Boeing jet usually cruises at. That would have been devastating. That would have been absolutely devastating. And I got to mention, because I find this real interesting, how Boeing gave Alaskan Air $160 million because of this. But back when Boeing was being fined for putting faulty parts on planes, the fine was only like $5 million. Just some food for thought. And now let's talk about some Dreamliners.
787 from the South American airline Latam apparently dropped abruptly mid-flight from Sydney to Auckland, injuring at least 50 passengers and crew members.
And now this happened around the 11th of March 2024. Here's a couple of BBC headlines for you. 50 hurt as New Zealand-bound flight hit technical issues. And in the article even talks about how there was blood from people's heads on the ceiling panels. On this headline, Boeing tells pilots to check seats. That's incredible. They're trying to say that it was caused by a flight attendant accidentally hitting a switch on the pilot's seat, which threw the pilot into the controls, forcing the nose down. That sounds so cartoonish. I really find that hard to believe. And if that was the case, sounds like a pretty bad design for a plane. Oh, and now brace yourself for the next piece of Boeing-related news I need to include in this video. Something that happened on the 9th of March 2024.
Police in Charleston, South Carolina tell NBC News they are aware of the death of a former Boeing employee turned whistleblower. 62-year-old John Barnett found dead on Friday from what the coroner calls an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound.
So this is my retirement plaque.
Barnett retired from Boeing in 2017 after working as a quality manager for more than 30 years. Since his departure, he has taken legal action against the company, claiming he was retaliated against for raising safety issues internally, issues that Boeing denied at the time. Back in 2019, Barnett sat down with Today describing a haphazard safety culture at Boeing.
From day one, it's just all been about schedule and hurry up and just get it done, push the planes out. We're behind schedule. You know, we don't have time to worry about issues that y'all bring up.
In 2017, the FAA released a review upholding many of Barnett's concerns. With regards to his sudden death, the company released a statement writing, "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing, and our thoughts are with his family and friends."
See, now, already, I find it difficult to believe that a whistleblower, in the middle of giving evidence, decides to do this to themselves. Already seems really sus. And now, here's another BBC headline. Boeing whistleblower John Barnett found dead. Alright, he worked for them for 30 years, retiring in 2017. And from 2010, he was employed as a quality manager at the North Charleston plant, the facility that builds the 787 Dreamliner. In 2019, Mr. Barnett told the BBC that under-pressure workers had been deliberately fitting substandard parts to aircrafts on the production line. He also said that he had uncovered serious problems with oxygen systems, which could mean 1 in 4 breathing masks would not work in an emergency. He said soon after starting work in South Carolina, he had become concerned that the push to get new aircraft built meant the assembling process was rushed and safety was compromised, something the company denied. He later told BBC that workers had failed to follow procedures intended to track components through the factory, allowing defective components to go missing. He said in some cases substandard parts had even been removed from scrap bins and fitted to planes that were being built to prevent delays on the production line. He also claimed that tests on emergency oxygen systems due to be fitted to the 787 showed a failure rate of 25%, meaning 1 in 4 could fail to deploy in a real-life emergency. Mr. Barnett said he had alerted managers to his concerns, but no action had been taken. Boeing denied his assertions. However, a 2017 review did uphold some of Mr. Barnett's concerns. It established that the location of at least 53 non-conforming parts in the factory was unknown and that they were considered lost. The oxygen cylinders issue, the company said that in 2017 it had identified some oxygen bottles received from the supplier that were not deploying properly, but it denied that any of them were actually fitted on aircraft. Yeah, but it just said that there were 53 non-conforming parts that are missing. How do we not know that some of those oxygen cylinders weren't part of those 53 and the reason they're missing is because they're part of planes now? And Boeing's credibility doesn't really make me want to trust what they're saying. And speaking of suspicious behaviour, and now if you somehow did not agree with me and think that the death of John Barnett was already very suspicious,
I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way.
First tonight, our investigative reporter Ann Emerson has new information in the death of Boeing whistleblower John Barnett. A close family friend of Barnett says he predicted he might wind up dead, that a story could surface that he killed himself. But he told her, don't believe it. Ann?
Tessa, Barnett's family friend Jennifer said they had talked about this exact scenario playing out, but his words seemed like a premonition. He told her, don't ever believe it.
I knew John because his mom and my mom are best friends. And so over the years, get-togethers, birthdays, celebrations, and, whatnot, we've all got together and talked, and, that's how we really know each other.
And when Jennifer needed help one day, Barnett came by to see her. They talked about his upcoming depositions in Charleston. Jennifer knew he filed an extremely damaging complaint against Boeing. He says the aerospace giant retaliated against him when he blew the whistle on unsafe practices. For more than 30 years, Barnett was a quality manager. He'd recently retired and moved back to look after his mom in Louisiana.
He wasn't concerned about safety because I asked him, I said, aren't you scared? And he said, and his voice and the way he would talk, no, I ain't scared. He said, but if anything happens to me, it's not suicide. I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way. He loved life too much. He loved his family too much. He loved his brothers too much to put them through what they're going through right now.
And he basically told you not to believe it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Not true. He's got too much to do, likes breathing. And he did. He had a lot of plans of things that he wanted to do.
What do you think happened?
I think somebody got in there and made, money can buy anything nowadays, it seems like. And there's a lot of evil in this world. I think somebody didn't like what he had to say and wanted to shut him up and didn't want it to come back on anyone, so that's why they made it look like a suicide.
Crazy. Absolutely insane. And there's more troubles for Boeing because about a week into April 2024, this happened. We won't even go into that because I also need to mention before I wrap this video up, another whistleblower has come forth. Boeing is facing new pressures after a whistleblower reported safety concerns over the manufacturing of some of its planes to US regulators. Engineer Sam Southpaw accused Boeing of taking shortcuts in the construction of its 787 and 777 jets. He claimed he was threatened with termination after raising concerns with bosses, but Boeing said the claims were inaccurate and added that it was confident its planes were safe. The whistleblower's attorneys said Boeing had made decisions for the 787 aircraft assembly which placed stress on joints that linked up parts of the body of the jet, an issue affecting more than 1,000 planes. In a whistleblower complaint filed with the FAA in January, he alleged the method could reduce the lifespan of the plane. These problems are the direct result of Boeing's decision in recent years to prioritize profits over safety, and a regulator in the FAA that has become too deferential to industry, his lawyers Deborah Kratz and Lisa Banks said in a statement. It goes on to say that he had been transferred to work on the 777 plane after he raised concerns. He had soon observed other issues in the assembly of that plane. Well done, you made it to the end. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me how you feel about getting on a Boeing plane. And a quick shout out to Emily, and I'll see you all next time.
What do you mean with an exclamation point?